She was just a farmer, until the jet lost both engines and her voice came on the radio. The early morning sun spread golden light across the rolling fields of Millerton, a quiet town where everyone knew each other and life moved at a gentle pace. Among these fields, a lone figure moved with quiet purpose, her worn boots crunching against the dew-soaked earth. Her name was Clara Hayes. To anyone in town, she was simply the farmer who tended the small crops she inherited from her family, known for her stubborn work ethic and quiet smile. No one would have guessed that Clara held a secret life, one she had long buried beneath layers of ordinary days and routine chores. On that very morning, a commercial jet was soaring high above the clouds, carrying hundreds of passengers across the country. Flight 924, a sleek, silver bird in the sky, seemed no different from thousands of other flights, until the unthinkable happened. Midway over the Rockies, the engine sputtered violently, sending alarms screaming through the cockpit. Pilots Captain Reynolds and First Officer Simmons exchanged a tense glance. Both engines had failed simultaneously. "This isn't possible," Reynolds muttered, his knuckles tightening around the yoke. "Both engines, gone?" Simmons' hands flew across the controls. "We're losing altitude fast. We need to get the auxiliary power online and we need guidance, someone who knows emergency procedures, someone trained for this. We need help." Below, Clara had just finished checking the irrigation system on her farm. The hum of distant machinery and the chirping of birds were the only sounds around her. She wiped sweat from her brow and noticed something unusual, a faint crackle from the handheld radio she sometimes used to check local weather updates. At first, she ignored it, thinking it was static. But then a voice came through, urgent and desperate. "This is Flight 924. We have lost both engines. Request immediate guidance. Anyone on this frequency, respond." Clara froze. That voice, it sounded like it was about to pierce through the clouds themselves. Her fingers trembled slightly as she adjusted the dial. "Flight 924, this is Clara Hayes. I hear you. I can help," she said, her voice steady despite the sudden adrenaline surging through her veins. The pilot's eyes widened. "Clara." Reynolds repeated, "Yes, Captain Reynolds, it's me. I used to train with the Air Rescue Command. It's been years, but I remember enough. You need to stabilize your glide. Check your flaps, maintain 220 knots, and listen carefully," she instructed, her tone calm and authoritative. Passengers inside the cabin were oblivious to the unfolding crisis at first. Some were dozing, others scrolling through their devices, when suddenly the PA system crackled. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We are experiencing engine failure. Please remain calm. Guidance is coming." From the cockpit, Clara directed the pilot step by step. She guided them to reduce drag, balance the weight, and prepare the landing gear for an emergency approach. Her voice was firm, precise, and completely composed, a stark contrast to the panic that had gripped the cockpit moments before. Outside, the mountains loomed closer, jagged and unforgiving. Flight 924 was descending rapidly, and every second counted. Clara's hands moved instinctively over the radio controls, giving constant updates while recalling every emergency maneuver she had once practiced. "Now, turn your nose slightly left to align with the valley ahead. Altitude is dropping too fast, trim your rudder. You can do this," she said, her voice almost a lifeline. Down below, the residents of Millerton began to notice the unusual roar of the jet in distress. The small town had seen planes before, but nothing like this. People paused mid-conversation, looking up as the silver aircraft fought against gravity and the invisible forces of disaster. Inside the cockpit, sweat poured down Reynolds' face. "Clara. I don't know how you remembered all this." She gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. "You never forget the things that save lives, Captain. Just focus on the controls and trust me." Minutes felt like hours. The plane descended through the mountain pass, skimming over jagged cliffs and rushing rivers. Clara's voice never wavered, giving instructions for every minor adjustment, predicting turbulence, and guiding the pilots with an almost supernatural precision. Passengers had begun to sense the tension, murmurs spreading through the cabin as the plane tilted sharply to one side. A mother gripped her child, eyes wide with fear, while a businessman muttered prayers under his breath. No one could see the farm fields below, the distant hills where Clara had spent her life tending crops, yet her presence was now the invisible tether holding hundreds of lives together. Prepare for a crash landing in the clearing ahead. You'll need to maintain glide at 190 knots, lower the flaps gradually, and brace for impact, Clara instructed. The pilots executed her commands flawlessly, the jet skimming the treetops and finally finding a narrow meadow just wide enough for an emergency landing. The landing was rough, tires screeching, fuselage shaking, but the plane touched down without breaking apart. The passengers screamed and then fell silent, realizing they were alive. After the engines finally sputtered to a stop, the cockpit erupted in exhausted relief. Reynolds slumped back into his seat, shaking his head in disbelief. "Clara, you saved us. You saved everyone." Through the radio, Clara allowed herself a small laugh. Just a farmer, remember? But she knew, in that moment, she was much more. She was a guardian, a lifeline, someone whose ordinary life had concealed extraordinary skill. Emergency crews arrived within minutes, helping passengers off the plane and checking for injuries. Reporters swarmed, trying to find the hero who had guided the plane to safety. Clara slipped away quietly, back to her fields, boots muddy, hands still rough from morning chores. She didn't need recognition. Her reward was the knowledge that hundreds of lives were intact because she had answered the call. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Clara sat on the porch of her farmhouse, sipping cold tea. The radio crackled softly beside her, silent now except for the faint static. She gazed out over her fields, the wind rustling through the tall grass. She smiled to herself. Ordinary or not, she had changed the day, and perhaps the world, in her own quiet, unassuming way. And somewhere, far above, Flight 924 was no longer a story of tragedy, it was a story of survival, guided by a voice that no one expected, from a person no one saw coming. A farmer, yes, but also a hero, remembered by every soul she had saved.